Socrates. What was so dangerous about this elderly war hero who spent his days merely talking to people that he was sentenced to death by his own countrymen? Before we get into it, just a quick reminder to like and subscribe if you want to support me to make more content like this. Socrates was born in either 470 or 469 BCE in the Athenian suburb of Alopeike, the son of a stonemason and a midwife. At that time, Athens was the center of culture and learning in the Greek world, and Socrates received the customary education of a middle-class Athenian, learning to read and write, as well as other subjects such as poetry, gymnastics, and music. As an Athenian citizen, he was required to do military service, which he did in the Peloponnesian War against Jared Butler, Sparta, distinguishing himself in 3 separate campaigns, according to Plato. In later life, he shunned material concerns, rarely washing, wearing ragged clothes, and walking around barefoot. He was also notoriously ugly, with a pot belly, bulging eyes, and a flat, turned-up nose. Despite this, he was married twice and had at least 3 sons. Socrates would wander the streets and squares of Athens, engaging passers-by in conversation. The core of Socrates' philosophy was that the only thing he knew was that he knew nothing. He would often engage in public dialogues with acknowledged experts on particular subjects. In these dialogues, he would employ the so-called Socratic method, or elenchus. Socrates would take the role of someone who was completely ignorant on the subject in question, and would ask seemingly stupid questions. More often than not, this resulted in the so-called expert contradicting themselves and revealing their own ignorance publicly in front of Socrates' disciples and the general public. Since the expert's opinion was usually the mainstream one, this also served to undermine commonly accepted truths. Unsurprisingly, this did not endear him to his fellow Athenians, and he made many enemies. In 399 BCE, he was charged with impiety and corrupting the youth of Athens. In relation to the charge of impiety, he was accused both of worshipping false gods and of being an atheist. In his defense, he pointed out that these 2 statements were contradictory, but to no avail. He was convicted by a majority of a jury of 500 male Athenians. As per Athenian custom, he was offered the chance to propose his own punishment. He proposed that he be fed and housed for free because of the services he'd rendered to the state. Alternatively, he proposed that he be fined 1 mina, about 1¼ pounds, of silver, stating that that was all he had. The jurors rejected both proposals and sentenced him to die by drinking an infusion of the poisonous plant hemlock. It's unclear whether Socrates' trial and conviction were truly motivated by religious concerns or whether they were political in nature. It may have been that he was perceived as a threat to the fragile Athenian democracy, which has only recently been re-established after a Spartan-sponsored dictatorship known as the 30 Tyrants. Some argue that the distinction is meaningless anyway, since religion and politics were intimately entwined in the Athens of the time. Socrates spent his last day among his friends, who offered to help him escape, but he chose to abide by the laws of the state and stoically accepted his fate. It might surprise you to know that Socrates left no writings. Everything we know about his philosophy comes from the writings of others, particularly the dialogues written by his pupil and friend Plato. So how do we know that Plato and others accurately relayed the ideas of Socrates? To be honest, we don't. It's been a matter of scholarly debate for centuries. The consensus seems to be that Plato was relatively accurate in his early characterizations of Socrates, but his later writings are more influenced by his own philosophical ideas. Whether it's an accurate portrayal or not, the Socrates we know is a foundational figure in Western philosophy. In fact, he's so iconic that all those who came before him are lumped under the heading of the pre-Socratics. He also inspired many philosophers who came after him, for example, Kierkegaard and Nietzsche, and of course his disciples Plato and Xenophon. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, feel free to leave a comment, especially if you have a specific topic that you'd like me to cover in a future video.